to not look at AI as ChatGPT writing your book. That's to look at AI as a coach, as a mentor, as a provocateur, as an editor. AI can do a lot of amazing things, but telling your story, it cannot do. Only you can tell your story.
Welcome to AI Experience, the podcast that demystifies artificial intelligence. My name is Julian Rodersberger, and we are going to find out how AI is changing the world. And I'm super happy to welcome Dan Curran. He is a serial entrepreneur based in St. Louis, Missouri, and known for his innovative contributions to the marketing and publishing industries. He founded Chapters.io in 2023 to leverage advanced AI to organize voice transcripts into clear and logical non-fiction manuscripts. So, if you want to write a book at the age of AI, this is definitely a conversation you'll want to listen to. Today, we'll talk about book writing, manuscript, and the publishing industry. Thank you for joining me today. How are you, Dana?
I am doing excellent. Nice to speak with you.
So, Dan, in 2002, a study found that 81% of Americans felt they had a book in them and that they should write it. More than 20 years later, do you think that is still the case?
Absolutely. And that's anecdotally from my life experience. However, I look at it through a different prism that I think everyone's life should be captured if they so choose. And there's a lot of intimidation factors that come into play, and we'll get to it. But that's kind of the genesis of why we, our philosophy and how we look at this company. But absolutely, I think everyone has something to say, either in a nonfiction format or a fiction format.
And so before November 2022, writing a book was somewhat complex. Then ChatGPT arrived. How did how did this change the landscape for authors and editors and readers? Is it now easier than ever to write a book using ChatGPT?
Okay, so we'll take a step back. If we go to November, what was it, November 30th of 2022, when OpenAI launched ChatGPT, really no user manual, right? It just organically took off. I think they were even putting it out there as R&D, testing, et cetera. Now it's,
Mhm.
a phenomenon. It's really altered and really gotten people very excited and overestimating probably its capabilities on one hand and underestimating the capabilities on the other hand. From a writing standpoint, it was low hanging fruit. If I need to write an email, if I need to write a birthday card, it certainly is something that is quite handy at times. Writing a book, totally different. And you'd probably be surprised if what AI does, uh, I believe that it's out of 1 to 100, writing is number 100 of things it does really well. Um, it doesn't quite have that spark, that intuition that humans have. Can it write amazing content at times? Absolutely. But right now, it's not quite there. It's very mechanical and arduous to write a 50,000 word book using ChatGPT. Will it get there again? Possibly, but we really look at AI kind of reverse engineering and love to talk about that as well.
So you had a lot of experience in content in the publishing industry. Did you see ChatGPT coming in 2022? Were you surprised when it was launched? And what was your first reaction when you tried it?
Well, at that time I had a company with 100 plus writers and a dozen editors, and I knew it was something I had to pay attention to because these writers and editors, it's a craft. A lot of it, especially if you have a journalism background. And so there was a lot of nervousness on my staff and my ecosystem. So as a business owner for that company, I had to be really careful on how I approached it. So I looked at it as something to test and to monitor. And then as we went through 2023, we started seeing clients asking about it and using it. In positive ways and negative ways. So it really flipped everything on its head.
Mhm.
Uh, However, there's still a role, especially for editors, in what they call the human in the loop. So no, I didn't see it coming at all. But hey, the world is chaotic at times, and whether it's economic or political, and so here's a technology uh, evolution that happened quite quickly, and so you just have to, modify your business plan and move forward.
And so you founded a company called chapters.io last year in 2023. So it promises to turn conversations into compelling manuscripts within 90 days. So what exactly is chapters.io and what services do you offer? Could you explain a little bit?
Yes, our mission is actually quite simple. Is we want to remove the stress of writing a manuscript, of writing a nonfiction book, be it a memoir, biography, how to, or a big idea book like Simon Sinek, Why, something like that.
Mhm.
So if that is swirling in your brain, but you might not have the fine motor skills to type it out, you might not have the time, you might have attention deficit disorder, you might just be intimidated, not think you're worthy of writing. That is our mission, is to relieve that stress and to have you release everything that's swirling in your brain, your wisdom, life experiences, and be able to document that. And so that's why we created chapters. So one way you could look at it is we're transcription. We're using AI to help transcribe, but editorial rigor and attribution, all these things that are important, the authenticity of who you are, is really, really important to us. So that's why we started. Is writing can be very intimidating, and sharing your perspective can be intimidating, and we wanted to reduce that stress.
Okay. So chapters helps the writers create not a book, but a manuscript. Could you explain the difference?
Yes.
And how do you turn a manuscript into a book?
Yeah, publishing is a spectrum, right? So you write the manuscript, you publish it, you market it. Our focus, our swim lane is the manuscript, to create that 50,000 word book
Mhm.
that then goes to a publisher, that then goes to, then is marketed to, or just handed to your best friend or your family. But our focus is that manuscript. So we record your thoughts. And what we've done is train the large language model to organize your thoughts in a story arc for a how-to book or a memoir, biography, as I mentioned. So all we're doing is taking those text files and any other text files you have. So if you've been on podcasts, if you've been on television or radio, we can get the text files. If you've written blogs, we put those in, and we will organize them in a story arc and a chapter outline that then you review and you determine, is this representative, or do I like the tone and tenor of what I've spoken? On top of that, we have an editor that is with you the entire time. So it's I think, more authentic than a ghostwriter, right? That's not you, that's the ghostwriter. And maybe they're not transcribing your thoughts exactly. This transcribes your thoughts exactly. But if the way we've trained the model, if there's a kind of a different or more clear way of stating something you said, we offer a suggestion. So we're not manipulating really anything except the order, and then we find gaps or we ask questions,
Mhm.
and helps the writer kind of enjoy the process.
And so the final deliverable is a manuscript. And then what do you do with it? Do you self publish it? Do you send it to publishers?
Yeah, so great question. So everyone is different. So you have some real alpha male, female, entrepreneurs, executives that, want to be Amazon bestseller, New York Times bestseller. So they have very ambitious goals. They want to be speakers. They really want to elevate or accelerate their thought leadership status. For that, we might connect them, or they already have an agent to one of the big publishing companies. Or we'll connect them with a hybrid publisher. So we do that all the time. We have others that want to self-publish, and they're, thank you, I'm going to go Amazon route, and then they just handle it themselves. And then we have some that say, hey, I'm going to stew on this a little bit longer, and maybe I'll share with my family or my business associate. So again, the supply chain, as I mentioned, the writing the book, the publishing, the publishing marketing is kind of red ocean, but it kind of works, and there's rules, and there's these 20 steps everyone has to do. Where it gets stuck is this manuscript. About 80%, to use that 80% number again, of manuscripts get abandoned. People give up on it after so many months or years. And that's what we're doing. We're saying, no, you're worthy. We want to grab your story. And the 90 days is, we can go longer for sure if someone goes on holiday or vacation, but we're there to help them capture their wisdom.
And so, how does your solution specifically address the anxieties many authors could face? How do you coach them? Do you help them? Is it like within the app? How does that work?
Again, sorry, that is just a really great question because it's been interesting to us as we've worked with these authors over the last year or so. Um, you just give a big smile and you there's no, pseudo psychology, and you just motivate that again, that their stories are worth telling and sharing.
Mhm.
And you do it through technology, branding, and human interaction. So we kind of split the pie there. So our editors are, we've selected only best-selling editors, people that are really adults in the room that can deal with this type of persona, especially if it's a successful business person. So, if someone is maybe not of that stature but has a unique idea, and they want to share it in a book, but they're nervous, we try to uh, every week not put too much on their plate, because there's a process of answering questions that we send them that they record or videotape. So the whole process is meant to be very user friendly and really remove that friction. But that's very important part. There, a lot of people have um,
Mhm.
trepidations when they're writing a book, even if they are focused on getting it across the finish line. That sometimes they get stuck.
So you mentioned, of course, chapters.io is using AI, is using large language model to create the manuscript. Did you create your own model or are you using existing one? And also, how do you deal with data privacy and all this type of questions, around the tech within the chapters.io app?
Yes. So kind of two questions there. As far as the large language models, we're testing and using
Mhm,
two or three all the time. So yes, we are on the back end of those models and their OpenAI's playground, and it's evolving quickly. And there's a big community that out there of other verticals that we're sharing and talking about how to again remove friction, and how to for us to train the model to ask
mhm.
questions and to look for gaps in someone's story. So we're constantly testing. So this is, I would imagine, in perpetuity, we'll be doing R&D. There's just not this. There was no user manual. This is very new space for everyone. So no one is truly an expert. Um, as far as the privacy, that yeah, I even did a little research on that yesterday. That is, nothing is foolproof, and there's not a consensus on where that stands. So we mitigate it by, in the manuscripts, by putting privacy statements in there. Some of our people want to limit the digital exposure of their manuscripts, so some do not want an ebook. So those things are, I think there'll be clarity in the next year or so as far as privacy. But right now, we're doing everything we can to educate our author. They're ultimately responsible, but we feel obliged to help them as well.
So I'm going to be the devil's advocate for just 2 minutes. If you are using the OpenAI model, that means I could use ChatGPT to do the same kind of work you're doing with chapters. What's the added value you provide? I understand there is a human in the loop, but from a technical standpoint, from the output you received from the AI model, is there a big change? And what's the differences between like ChatGPT and chapters?
So we're on the back end. So by default, there's more token space. There's more developmental agility that we have. End of the day, what we have been doing is thousands of hours of training our model. Again, it's the model that our clients use is not touching the outside world. I'm holding up on a camera right here, this cup. It's an empty vessel from day one, but we train that vessel to look for gaps, to remove any time the writer repeats themselves, just basic 101, a story arc of a book. So that's how we spend our time as training. So is this so proprietary that no one else can do it? Not at all, but it's been thousands of hours of training,
Mhm.
recipe of adding the editor in the loop, and just really good old fashioned due diligence on our part on why is the publishing industry so archaic? Why is it so red ocean? Why is it so intimidating? And so we're not too worried about competitors or the outside world right now. We're just trying to solve helping someone write a book in a real easy and pleasurable way. So again, we're so consumed with ChatGPT writing copy. Yeah, that's part of it, but that's just one component.
Okay. How do you see generative AI transforming the traditional book publishing industry? You just say that the publishing industry has been so archaic, using old tech, old mindset, maybe. What do you feel any change with generative AI?
So I'll answer it this way. So I have a decade or more in the marketing space for enterprise large brands doing content and editorial work. So scientific blogs, white papers, and so forth. And when ChatGPT launched from OpenAI, the industry has been an overdrive to get ahead of it. The ad agency industry has been reimagined. Graphic design is being reimagined. They're not ahead of the curve by any means, but they really got on it. When we looked over at the publishing space, um, not that they're not really smart people, I don't believe they looked at it as something as urgent. So what our interpretation is that they're just a little bit more slow to move into this to really examine and do R&D around AI because there's so much sensitivity on plagiarism, which I totally understand. Um, However, you do have some that are being very diligent, and I would say Amazon is one. And I'm not just talking about the writing of the content, but AI as far as using AI for marketing the book, publishing the book. So this train has left the station, just like the newspaper industry and the music industry and the movie industry. I think the book industry is just a little bit behind. So that's
Okay.
I think that they'll definitely be there because at the end of the day, it's about customer experience and making profits. And so if we can get more books out there that are even better from an untapped audience, which we think we're doing, then I think we'll all be happy.
Yeah. Uh, because I'm thinking like self-publishing changed a lot of things with Amazon. But do you think that AI can truly democratize like publishing, or do you anticipate new gatekeepers emerging in the process?
I get probably there'll probably be
Yeah.
gatekeepers, everywhere we look. How about this? Let's look at just books as a whole. And I should have this statistic, but going to the airport or going to a bookstore, those books that you see out of all the books written, that's way less than 1% of the books out there.
Hmm.
It's I think it's a handful of copies of every book that's written, just a handful, 50, 100, 1,000 books are ever physically printed. Um, so that is that is a reality. And I was just on a phone with someone yesterday that the very first thing there was a publishing so-called expert, and they said, "Well, there's too many books out there." And I think they're looking at it wrong. I we look at it or we look at it differently. Why not capture someone's wisdom so it lives in perpetuity and that someone can access their kids a year from now, businesses 100 years from now? Why not just capture it? So what we're calling a book might be something that chapters needs to redefine because whether you're printing thousands of books or two books, we're agnostic to that because the marketplace takes care of that. If it's an amazing book, people will find you. Like you're a gifted athlete as a kid, the sports teams are going to find you. The book will turn out well, but that's not the problem we're solving. We're saying we want to capture your wisdom and life experiences.
So, are you concerned about the potential saturation of content in a world where it is sometimes faster to write than to read? Than to read, because once everyone will have its own book on Amazon, what will we read, and how a book can stand out of the crowd?
So I'll answer in two ways. As far as too much content, I think that, like to use the train analogy, that train left a long time ago. I think there's not enough content for you and I to read, you know, during our normal day. So there is a lot of content, a lot of bad content. So all that noise, that's just a reality, I think, in to perpetuity, because there are machines now that just crank out blogs.
Mhm.
And, I think the review sites are really having an issue right now with fake reviews, and Quora and others just have, it's just all AI generated nonsense. But if you look at your ecosystem, so I'm Dan Curran, my ecosystem, my family, my friends, my business network, whether it's dozens, hundreds, thousands, why not have, and if and in business especially, why not have my perspective shared uh, with this ecosystem? So are they saturated with Dan current content? I don't think so. I
Mhm.
don't think so. So again, I'm looking at it more from libertarian, as we would say here in the States. Like, the marketplace will take care of it. But I think, my dad died when I was a teenager, and there's no record of him whatsoever as far as what does he think about politics or business or religion. And boy, I'd like to kind of know that, and my grandfather and all that. So that's the great thing about capturing all this wisdom. And again, for legacy books, I'll just be real quick on this. That's another category that we work on. That's end of life or your grandfather's story. Again, it goes in this vessel. Just imagine your grandfather, your parents, you, and again, into perpetuity, you have this repository, this living library of everyone's perspective, even the voice. So publishing needs to be refined, redefined, I guess, is how I would answer your question.
So that's an interesting point of view, actually, because you that means you don't need to sell millions of copies to be successful. Like, if your book touches the heart and the soul of your readers, it could be your family, your friends, your close circle. That could be just enough for a book to be successful from the author's standpoint.
Well, I'm finishing my first book right now. And that's kind of how we started the company, is because one of the reasons it was just very arduous when I started out. And I thought, well, there's got to be an easier way. If I finish that, and I'm close enough, I'm just feeling this now. I mean, the sense of accomplishment is just amazing. So what's wrong with
Hmm.
that? I have an author that we're finishing right now, and it will certainly be a bestseller. He's already got a built-in audience, and he will make tens of thousands of dollars in speaking. Nothing wrong with that. So those two spectrums, one book sits in a drawer, one sits at bookstores at the airport. It's all good.
Okay. Okay, interesting. And so your solution works in English, obviously, but do you have any plan to make it work in other languages?
Yes, that box was checked off many months ago. So its translation is quite easy now to do for all of our
Uh-huh.
books, as far as tone, tenor, regional sensitivities to the language. That we have editors that we employ to do that, from that are from those regions. So artwork, translation, all of that is quite simple now, and we're really excited about the international distribution, and working with people internationally.
At what age and under which circumstances should someone start thinking about writing a book, a nonfiction book?
Well, I think you have life experiences that are acquired after decades, so there's no doubt there's an age, eh, you know um story here. And that means you're going to have a lot more life experiences at 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old than you have when you're in your early 20s.
Hmm.
However, we have a few. And a lot of people that write nonfiction books, like the how to's and motivational or self help, are real alphas, right? They're very consumed with, in a good way, their unique perspective, that they have something unique to say. So there's definitely people in their 20s or probably teens that have something unique to say. And we love capturing that as well. So there's, we're again agnostic to that.
Okay. How do you make sure that a book written with the help of AI is still an authentic work, that it is a genuine book where you can feel the intention and the passion and the personality of the author? Aren't you afraid that sometimes AI could, just level everything down and produce low quality generic content?
Well, I'm afraid of people not sharing their life experiences and unique words. That's what I'm afraid. I'm afraid of ghostwriters misinterpreting and a writer or the author, the client getting fatigued and just letting the ghostwriter, articulate that person's perspective. That's what I'm more afraid of. Anti plagiarism, 100% for attribution. Um, 1,000% for AI having the ability when I write something or if I voice something and as our technology does, it allows you to capture your perspective via talking and put that in our model, that AI can find gaps and prod and ask questions. Hey, you talked about a partnership that went wrong. Can you explain that further? So that's what gets me excited about AI. It really does better than humans. It finds gaps in what's missing in your story. I see it every day when we turn a manuscript over to our clients with these questions. Hey, what about your father passing away? You didn't really go into depth. Can you tell us how you felt? So it's an instigator for you to be more authentic.
Okay. In your opinion, what are the biggest misconceptions people have about using AI in the creative process of writing a book?
Well, it goes to what I just said. And a lot of people say this. Just think of it as an assistant, as a cheerleader, as something to help you
Hmm.
push your narrative further. If you're going to plagiarize and write a blog that ChatGPT creates 1,000 words, then chapters and our philosophy is not for you. That's not what we're here for. And I see why people do that or brainstorm with AI. I think is perfectly logical. I mean, there's so many great things it does, but I think we have a lot of voices. And I think in the publishing industry that look at AI as plagiarism, fake content, synthetic content, and they're not looking at the 99 other things, as I said. I think, yes, there is a component, but I need to brainstorm about why my partnership with my last business partner didn't go well. This is what he did to sabotage my business. What possibly did I do to sabotage the business that I wasn't thinking about? ChatGPT, please give me some ideas to think about. And if it came back with like five things that, could it be this? Could it be that? What is wrong with that? That is just prodding and helping you, share your thoughts, your authentic thoughts.
Okay. So, do you think AI will eventually be able to handle more complex aspects of book production? We talked about manuscript, but what about layouts and design and marketing? Do you have any opinion on that?
I say yes, 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 yes. It'll affect every
Okay.
single thing, and I'm not predicting more than the next year where anything's going. But history's taught me a few things. As a little child, either on TV or somewhere, I remember art directors, graphic designers at ad agencies with big drafting tables and brushes and markers and then you go forward a decade or two, you hear about something called Photoshop or InDesign. Um, isn't the same thing? Isn't what's different? Has anyone opened up Canva lately? Has anyone opened up InDesign or these software programs? I mean, they accelerate. They get you from, to use a U.S. analogy, baseball, it gets you to third base really quick. Um, but there's still a lot of graphic designers. There's still a lot of artists that use technology. And so I would say It's an accelerant, but the human intuition and life experiences will remain so important.
Have you talked to publishers since you launched chapters? I'm just curious about what they think about your solution, and if they are maybe, I don't know, afraid or curious or excited about your solution.
Um, Great question. They're scared. There's the big 4 or 5 publishers in the states, and then there's dozens of hybrid publishers.
Mhm.
Um, I've had really 2 or 3, but one significant conversation, and this is what this number 2 person at a company you'd be very familiar with told me. Dan, we know it's coming. If you even use the word AI in the hallways here, people will pull their hair out. But we know that in the coming, weeks, months, years, there will be a need to be open to taking baby steps to discuss AI. And life is, people say life's short. I say it's long. We'll get there. It'll be what it'll be. I feel like we are, canary in the coal mine or R&D. We're just let's just have some rules. No plagiarism. Everything has to be attributed. But why can't we use AI in ways, as I've mentioned often on this conversation, to ask questions, to really kind of replace the B and C grade ghostwriters. The A ghostwriters are fine; they're brilliant. They're going to do great. But I'll just say this real quick: a lot of those books that those publishers um, print and market are written by ghostwriters, and those ghostwriters uh, are are some of them are fabulous, but some of them, I believe, if you talk about ethics, I think start there first and compare that to what we're doing. And I think with chapters, it's way more authentic. It's your voice. We're just transcribing your voice and organizing it. So I guess we're Grammarly, on steroids. It's just, but is there going to be some synthetic AI content that bleeds in there somewhere? Because we don't control everything. The author could add something,
Mhm.
probably, but I think that ship has sailed. But again, the marketplace will tell you that they'll say, "Yeah, that's a terrible book," and people with really unique perspectives that, especially the chapters, is helping. I think will do fine.
And so, what's the future for ghostwriters? Do you think it is still a job that people would want to do in a year, 2 year, 5 years from now?
Absolutely, I just think they'll use tools um, like chapters or some of these other writing tools, and they will have again to look for gaps in the story. I interviewed the writer, I interviewed the client. Here's chapter 3. I have 3,000 words here. Am I missing anything? AI comes back, says yes. Ask them about this, and this. Or um, they sure talked in first person here, but in chapter 7 they talk second and third person. How can I alter that?
Mhm.
Um, is that is that pure, writing, and would elitists get upset that maybe the computer changed that? Maybe, I guess, but it's just grammar and editing. People are doing it manually now, so I think it's an efficiency play. So yes, thumbs up to ghostwriters, but I'll just say this: uh, for a lot of, in the nonfiction space, a lot of these engagements cost 40,000 to 150,000 or more for a ghostwriter. That's a
Oh,
lot of money. They take 9 months, they take a year, 2 or 3 years, and it's a forced marriage. So it's kind of awkward. You're sharing, you have to be transparent and very vulnerable to ghostwriters. I think again, what we're doing with chapters is you still have a human, you have the editor, but the editor is more of like a really good coach. And they're not there to get very so intimate about your thoughts because we're allowing you to do that on your own time through our technology. So I think it'll evolve. Ghostwriters will be there, but they'll evolve, and they'll use technology. But again, ethics and integrity is so important.
okay. So let's talk numbers. I'd like to know, on average, how much it costs to create a manuscript using chapters, and how long does it take?
Yeah, so we have different packages. So it's around 15,000 US dollars to about $25,000 for a 50,000 word manuscript. So we have a spectrum of of pricing. We intentionally went after at this point um, entrepreneurs, executives, people that were really had high intent to get their books across the finish line. So that's our price point. So we we are going to have some other packages later this year, next year that will go south of that. That will be a little bit more affordable. Um, we compare that to the pricing I mentioned before, which is the 40,000, 75,000, $150,000 that a really good ghostwriter would charge. Again, a lot of our clients are saying, "Yeah, I like the ghostwriter I was considering, but it's going to take 9 months, and I just don't want to spend my Friday afternoons talking to someone. I'd rather, for 9 months." And your process is just a little bit more efficient.
Okay. And in terms of timing, so we said 90 days. Is it like an average? Sometimes it could be less, more than that?
Yeah, it's an average. We do that because we at the beginning of our engagements we tell them that 80%. It's a lot. 80% of manuscripts are abandoned, even with ghostwriters. Um,
Hmm.
People get fatigued or they get feel imposter syndrome. They something comes up, vacations come up, life comes up. So we want the story to evolve. People change their thoughts as they get start writing a book. That's totally fine, but it's not going to do anyone any good if we're 6 months, 12 months out and that book is halfway done. So we state that, and our target persona right now really appreciates that we're diligent about getting it across the finish line.
Okay. Do you somewhat filter the books, the manuscript you want to work on? Do you say sometimes to an author, I'm sorry, it's not going to work for X, Y reason? Or do you just welcome everyone, no matter the ideas, the experience, the backstories, etc.?
There's some categories like religious manuscripts. We're really, our technology can handle, but we don't really have the editorial team. That's a niche that deserves editors that are well equipped to help that person.
Hmm.
So that's just one category. Cookbooks, highly visual books that will go into next year. We can't wait to do those, but right now we're not doing those. Um, we do have, after kind of a phase one through our process, a blueprint, outline, etc., we do stop the world and we really are at an inflection point. The inflection point is this: some of our writers already have a lot of words written. They might be halfway through their book and they're just stuck. If we Before, when we first started out, we really couldn't help that person, but now we have a lot of clients there. If we have that client, we're going down a different path, and that is truly just asking them questions, so we're kind of stirring in their brain um, thoughts on where their book could be. So we're just like a coach. Um, the other person came with nothing. They just have one idea in their brain. That one goes down a different path where there's a lot more questions, a lot more editorial time. So no, we can handle any nonfiction book that again is a biography, how-to book, a big idea book, but we do take them down different paths.
Okay. So you mentioned non-fiction book. That's important. Why not fictions? Why can't we use chapters to create the next sci-fi or mystery novel that's going to be successful?
So two things. One, I just want to mention we're not a DIY tool, do it yourself. So we're a platform, publishing manuscript platform. So the human interaction is really, really important. The reason why I mentioned that in the context of what you just said, there are DIY tools that do help people create fiction, and and so that space is wide open. I'm sure there's a lot of innovation going there. Our charter is different. It goes back to what I said at the beginning. Our focus is not to flood the end zone, so to speak, with a million fiction and nonfiction books. Our focus is to get people to share their stories that are currently intimidated to share their stories. So the book is just an output of it, but really our mission is is hyper focused on your best friend or your neighbor or your business associate that, hey, I have something to say, but this publishing world is archaic, scary,
Mhm.
intimidating. I want them to come to chapters and say, hey, you have a place here to share your wisdom. So we love the nonfiction, and we hate that there's a lot of stories that aren't being told.
Okay. So, what advice would you give to someone on the fence about using AI to write their book? What do they need to get started?
um, to not look at AI as ChatGPT writing your book. That's to look at AI as a coach, as a mentor, as a provocateur, as an editor. That AI can do a lot of amazing things, but telling your story, it cannot do. Only you can tell your story. But if you want to tell your story and you look at hybrid publishing and regular publishing and don't know the difference between self publishing, ignore all that. Come to chapters and just share your story. Just talk. That's all you need to do. And if you have some blogs out there or podcasts, let's throw that into the vessel and let you look at really quickly, a raw manuscript and an outline. And when our clients see that in a matter of weeks, they're like, wow, I do have a life, amazing life experiences and a unique perspectives. And then work with our editor to sand the edges. And then voila, a couple of months, you have a book.
So, last question for you, Dan. How do you see the future of the publishing industry in 2 years, 5 years, or even 10 years? You mentioned earlier that AI is a big thing. That's the big elephant in the room. But realistically, where are we going in the publishing industry?
You're not going to like my answer. And that is, who knows? I do know a few things on those macro levels. Who knows on kind of the more immediate? I do know holding a book, publishing a book, um, giving a book to your clients, uh, desiring to be a thought leader in your industry, a book still has a lot of credibility. It has a lot of street cred for that person, even more so now. There's hundreds, thousands of books every day coming out, but their marketing is not meant to be so much Amazon. The marketing is to within their sphere of influence in their industry. So I think that has not stopped. That I think people still look at people with books with high esteem. Um, as far as the future, I think technology is ahead of us for sure. I mean, that's obvious. And the people part is behind. So the big publishers, the big 4 or 5 publishers, and then the hybrid are still grappling it with this. And I don't know if you've noticed our political world, there's not a lot
Mhm.
of consensus right now. And there probably won't be a lot of consensus in the near term. But eventually it'll become ubiquitous and it'll be the new reality. So we're thinking the future looks bright, but it will be messy and chaotic. But but nothing new, right?
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Dan. So, at the end of each episode, the guest answers a question posed by the previous guest. After that, you'll have the opportunity to ask a question for the next guest. Are you ready?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. So, here's your question, courtesy of Sidney Shapiro, who is Assistant Professor of Business Analytics at the University of Lethbridge in Canada. We can listen to his question right now.
Would you be comfortable scaling your AI use if it meant sharing data with external companies for training purposes?
So I think that's an individual question. For me, yes. I I think it almost like cameras on the street or someone listening to me. It is what it is. So if I have something to share with my ecosystem, I think it should. For me personally, it's fine to be in the entire ecosystem. But there are caveats. I'm not a nuclear scientist. I'm not a biopharma expert. So there are sensitivities, and the AI world has a lot to grapple with as far as copyright protection, and there's some things you can do to mitigate that to some extent right now. But if any of your audience does a quick some research on it, it is far from foolproof. So it's a big ethical issue as well. So we all have to grapple with that, and hopefully these large language model companies will police themselves and have some good guardrails.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Dan. So, now what question would you like to pose for the next guest?
Awesome. So imagine it's 10 years from now, and there are movies, there are paintings, there is music that is amazing, that was all created by AI. Is that art? To the guest, to your guest, is that movie, is that music, is that painting truly art?
Interesting. I'm sure. Yeah, that's a very interesting debate. Well, thank you so much, Dan. I'll pose the question. Of course, I'll let you know whenever I have the answer available. Dan, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you for joining me.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you.
And that wraps up another episode of AI Experience. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe on your podcast platform. Your support counts, and your comments can really help share this experience with others. You can also visit the website ai-experience.io to find out more. See you soon for a new episode.